Well, we're following a developing story right now. The Washington Post is reporting that President Trump plans to announce next week that he will decertify the Iran nuclear deal. This comes ahead of an October 15th deadline, and despite Secretary of State Rex Tillerson's comment that the country is technically in compliance. Washington Post congressional reporter and CBS News contributor Ed O'Keefe joins me now by phone. Ed, what can you tell us about this decision and the president's reasoning behind this move?
Yeah, this is, first of all, credit my colleague Ann Guerin, who covers foreign affairs, for getting this. But our understanding at the Post is that he will announce that he's decertifying Iran in this regard, and essentially now kicked it back to Congress, which would have about 2 months really to determine what to do next, whether to impose new sanctions on Iran or to sort of deal with the situation in some other way, perhaps getting an agreement rewritten or just sort of rejiggering the current arrangement with Iran. This has been anticipated by folks here in Washington for quite some time, given the president's critical statements about Iran, not only during his presidential campaign, but since he took office. And he sort of dangled the possibility of this at his United Nations speech 2 weeks ago by calling out Iran so starkly as he did, and then once again suggesting that there would be an announcement to make on this in the coming days. Notable that what he's doing here essentially is a big victory for congressional conservatives, those that are strong critics of Iran, including Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton. It's also, frankly, what Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli prime minister, has been pushing for. So we'll see what exactly the president decides to do, and as our reporting notes, and as reality has reminded us in the past, all these decisions are in flux until they're officially announced and made by the president. But it is looking like we will get an announcement next week, and he will decertify the deal.
And Ed, so the fact that he's kicking this back to Congress, what does that mean? And what are you hearing from folks on Capitol Hill?
Well, that's what happens when things like this are decertified. It sort of sends it to Congress to determine what to do next. And that doesn't mean necessarily that stiffer penalties are going to be put on Iran in this regard. There have been some put in, of course, this year. But, what if anything it will do perhaps is just spark a new debate over Iran, its nuclear weapons program, and whether or not the United States should be taking stricter or more aggressive action against them in response. Folks up here are pretty much split on this. We've seen them in recent weeks pass the sanctions package against Russia, North Korea, and Syria, and there are obviously some penalties in place already against Iran. Some of them have, of course, been backed off given the deal, that the United States was part of, that was brokered by the Obama administration and European powers. So we'll see. The issue, what I find interesting here is if you look at sort of the items on the congressional to-do list, this is just adding another big stack of papers to an already pretty high pile of things on the to-do counter. Whether you've got tax reform, whether you have the clock ticking on immigration policy, this issue now, there are several senators who have been pushing to start a new debate on whether or not we need a new authorized use of military force to sort of update what it is the military can and cannot do in regards to fighting terrorism around the world. This will be seen as the White House yet again sort of pushing off an issue to lawmakers, providing them very little guidance on what specifically the president would like them to do, and just making it even more difficult for Congress to get through things that are on their plate right now.
Yeah, and not a whole lot of days on that congressional calendar either to get this stuff passed through.
Exactly.
Ed, I also want to ask you, Ed, about these close U.S. allies who are part of the deal. What do you think it means for our relationship with those countries?
Well, remember, European capitals aren't terribly pleased and are, frankly, somewhat confused by the mixed signals from the Trump administration on a variety of issues, most especially this week, the apparent differences between the Secretary of State, the president, and whether or not the vice president was involved in trying to broker a détente. You saw the Secretary of State yesterday deny the reports that he had called the president. Well, actually, he didn't entirely deny reports that he had called the president a moron, but he did deny that he had considered quitting. And we've seen just in the last 24 hours here at the Capitol, the Foreign Relations Chairman, Bob Corker, suggests that guys like Secretary Mattis, Secretary of State Tillerson, Defense Secretary Mattis, and White House Chief of Staff John Kelly, as current and former military leaders, are sort of keeping the United States from slipping into chaos. Well, if you're an ally anywhere else in the world and you hear a senior lawmaker say that, that should bring great pause and, again, more confusion. And so if the president wants to do this on top of everything else, that's going to make relationships tricky. That said, I think most allies who've been paying close attention would know since the campaign that the consequence of having President Trump elected would be something like this. So it won't come as a total surprise.
All right. Ed O'Keefe coming to us from Washington. Thank you for joining us, Ed.
Take care.